You're listening to the NASM-CPT podcast with Rick Richey, winner of the Share Care Emmy Award for Social Storytelling and the official podcast of the National Academy of Sports Medicine.
Hey, y'all, and welcome to the NASM-CPT podcast. My name is Rick Richey, and today we're going to be talking about something new with NASM, and I just found out about it recently. And in fact, I kind of found out about it because the gentleman that I have coming on as a guest today sent out a message to me and a group of other people saying, hey, I hope I didn't ruffle any feathers. And immediately he ruffled my feathers when he said that. I said, what's going on? So I wanted to find out what was happening. And then shortly after that, I was able to have a conversation with NASM and try to learn a little bit about what was going on and this new change that NASM has between the NCCA accreditation for their certification and something else that we offer. So with that, I want to point my finger and welcome the guy who started the buzz, at least for me, and allowed me to hear it. I want you to welcome my friend, Joe Drake. What's up, Joe?
How you doing, buddy?
Living the dream, my friend. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Just enjoying summer down here in South Florida, and the exciting changes that we've got, inside of the fitness industry. With NASM and the new option as far as the exam goes. So yeah, I was messaging in, trying to make sure that I was connected to all my NASM people, like you and the rest of the team. So I'm excited to be here on the podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I want to, first of all, introduce your company, or have you introduce your company. So you have a company called Axiom. So tell us a little bit about Axiom and what it is that you do in the partnership that you have with NASM.
Yeah, we've been partnered with NASM since 2014 into 15. And what we do is we take the NASM curriculum as an educational partnership and we bring it to life with students in real time. And we've been doing that in person here in South Florida since 2014 with our in-person 10-week-long courses. And in the last couple of years, like everyone in the world, we've been fortunate to go more online. And now we've got students not just around the country, different countries. We've got Africa right now, Canada, Mexico. So really cool. And, so it's exciting to be on here with you, especially Rick, because I already know since us running the course, for the last number of years, a lot of our students are on there every week, listening into the podcast, using it as a study tool. And I have to say, I think it's funny that we're on here together today because a lot of people are like, Joe, you and Rick, like, I like both of you guys. You guys both make things really simple. You're both kind of entertaining. And so I feel like that's a compliment to me to be compared to you. So
thank you, brother. Man, I appreciate that. Well, I have to tell you, this is funny. I was in Egypt recently in February of this year. So it's 2023. And I was doing a presentation on behalf of NASM for some of our education partners out there. And one guy comes up to me and he goes, Rick, do you know Joe Drake? And I was like, why? And he goes, like, I watch his videos all the time. He's my favorite. And I was like, good. Yes, I know Joe, because you and I know each other because we had met at a conference in Thailand, actually. So that was our first time meeting. But I was so familiar with you that I was like, hey, good to see you again. And you were like, hey, we've never met before.
Well, I think that's the beautiful thing about things like this podcast and honestly, all the media that's out there for all the downsides that social media comes along with, our ability to connect in person, and feel like I already know you. And honestly, that was the greatest thing is like being there in person and you're the same person you are on the podcast. And, sometimes that's rare to find, but I love that about, these things and being able to come on here and talk and connect with somebody in real life and in the virtual world.
Agreed. I'm happy you're here. I also want to shout out your Pursuit of Progress. Is that the name of the podcast that you have?
Yeah.
So I was honored to be a guest on that podcast as well. So thank you for that.
Not just a guest, the first guest.
Oh, and, boom!
There was no mistake about that. I mean, honestly, with all that we do with NASM, it made sense as I'm trying to pull in other people who've just got great experience in the fitness industry. And the cool part about that is I got to learn some things about you that I didn't know, like your previous acting career and like you know, the stars all started aligning for me.
You were like, ah, it makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Well, so shout out to you and what you do with Axiom and what you've done with hundreds of personal trainers down in South Florida, where they come to you and they go through your courses to kind of guide them through the educational process and the practical components when it comes to NASM. So NASM has partnerships with several schools around the country, including Axiom, other personal training schools, but also with colleges and universities. And so that's a shout out to our academic team that's there and the people that you talk with on a regular basis to make sure that you're understanding anything new that's coming about. And so something new, Joe, has come about. And I want you to kind of like, when did that first come to your attention? And then what did that mean when you put it out there and how that was received and how the bees started buzzing a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, for those who are listening or watching who have not seen some of the updates, right? I think some of the exciting things I look at it as far as the fitness industry is now the opportunity to take the exam and get NASM certified, not only through the NCCA and the nationally accredited certification, which isn't going anywhere, but also a non-proctored version that's actually the personal training certificate, so the PTC. And, you know, I think this was interesting because I've been having a lot of conversations with a lot of major gym chains that have 50, 60, 70, 80 plus locations throughout the country, and really just spending time trying to better understand what the industry is looking for in regards to getting trainers started, right? The starting point, getting experience. And so as soon as we got contacted as an educational partnership, we get alerted to some things earlier on. And so my connections with NASM had reached out about this new update. And I was extremely excited about it right away because I kind of felt like I already knew, right? Like the stars were aligning. I've been following certification for a long time in the industry, training 16 years now. And this update, I think, really is an opportunity to meet the needs of not only like the major hiring partners out there, but also like, let's call it the stair-stepped process of getting experience in the industry and being able to potentially even maybe get employed as you're actually going through the nationally accredited certification. So in general, like when I first saw it, I already knew. I say, hey, you know what? There's going to be a lack of understanding and confusion maybe about what this means. Like, is there not going to be an accredited certification? No, that's not going anywhere. But it's about trying to meet trainers where they are and give them some ability to kind of bring themselves along. And so I think it's a great opportunity for new and aspiring coaches and trainers.
Excellent. All right. So again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe Drake, and he is the founder and owner of Axiom Fitness down in South Florida. And basically what's happened, so just a recap of what Joe has mentioned, is that there is the regular NCCA accreditation. So we talked about at the top of the show, that's not going anywhere. But what they're now doing, NASM is saying, if you're not ready, right, to go into a proctored exam, to take the accreditation version of it, you can take the exam, and it's the same exam, and you can do it at home, unproctored. It can be an open book, and instead of becoming the NASM-CPT, so the certified personal trainer, you get the NASM certificate. So it is an NASM training certificate. And as Joe said, it's kind of like a baby step. So you have a training certificate, but it is not the accredited CPT. So the accredited CPT is not going anywhere, and the accreditation may change in the future, but nothing is going to change about whether or not we are accredited. There will always be an accredited version of the NASM CPT. What they're saying is that we lose a lot of people under that proctored exam, people with anxiety about going into it. It opened a lot of doors for us, I think. And Joe, this might be where this came from, is that a lot of doors were opened to people when during COVID, they couldn't go to a proctored exam. So they would, like an online proctor would watch you through a camera to make sure that you were still being watched, which is super spooky. Like, it's intimidating knowing that somebody is there. So this is a way where it's like, hey, I've got my certificate, I've studied, I'm doing this at home and taking the certificate. And it's almost like, all right, I've taken this test, I've done it. At some point, I may decide to take that leap and do the next step. Is that right? Is that what you're kind of feeling that's looking like?
That's the way that I'm seeing it, right? And the way that Axiom is really communicating where this fits inside of the process, right? We look at it, you know, how you start has a big impact on how you finish. And so we know we want people, and this is one reason why we have so many people who find us from around the world, is because the NASM curriculum, the content, it's amazing. It's great. It's the reason we teach it specifically. It's why it's the most respected in the country and around the world. But the context that we're able to add for people along the way with the things that we do. And I think just the process of getting experience, any experienced coach and trainer, right? You guys get to sit down and talk with Rick, you know, if you're fortunate to connect with him at a podcast or at a, you know, a conference, and he's going to tell you like the experience that you get in your first couple of years is one of the most valuable and important things. And so this, I believe, is an opportunity for that. And I'm going to give you a very quick example, because as soon as we kind of came out, we have a private Facebook group, you know, that goes through and helps. And we offer up free value for people who are getting certified and studying. And so I talked about this and announced some of this inside of our Facebook group whenever this first came out. And I had a student who contacted me within like an hour or two, right? And I could tell him that this guy's an action taker. And he had been studying in the process for about a month and a half, 2 months, and had made his way through most of the material. And what he did is over the next 48 hours, he went through, he took the certificate, passed, right? And he did it not with his notes, right? So he went and took the exam. So he still knew the material. That's the way I look at it too. For you guys to understand, even as you take this certificate version of the certification that's included, it's not an additional cost, is that you have 3 times to take it, and you've got those 3 hours, right? So I think you still want to challenge yourself to know the information, because you're going to feel so much better about that. And this individual, shout out to my guy, Jason, he went through and did this, and then 12 hours later, the next day, got a job in a gym. And so for me, it immediately became very clear, like, wow, here's a very cool, powerful step for people who really want to start to take action. And now Jason has since signed up for one of our courses. He's still going to go through and take the NCC accredited exam, but he's now in the process of getting experience at a gym and really getting the best of all worlds. So I think it's awesome. And to me, that was like a really good example of like, okay, this is a positive, and I want to make sure people understand how to best use this.
Yeah, I like that. Do you see this kind of affecting the industry in any way, like outside, where this is going to really allow more people to get a handle on good personal training content without the fears or the blocks of heading into that proctored exam?
I mean, I definitely hope so. And I think from being on the educational partnership side, I also understand NASM has done some really amazing things in the last couple of years. And I found out about this actually from some of the schools, is that there are many high schools around the country that are now offering personal training courses for those that are like graduating seniors. Extremely exciting. So I've been fortunate to be actually on a couple of Zoom calls and get to speak to some of these groups. But I know one of the challenges for that age group was this proctored exam. And so another thing is that now it's opening up to this younger population that can really get started earlier on. And the testing better fits their needs as well. And it's probably a great start for them. Again, still going on, get the NCC accreditation, but for them to start to get their feet wet and get a feel for like, is this really something I enjoy? Am I going to be good at this? Is this going to be a direction for me in life? I wish I got started when I was in high school. I think that's amazing.
Me too. Yeah, no doubt. I was 24 when I started. How old were you when you started training, Jeff?
I think I got certified when I was 19. So it was still pretty early, right? Like I was like freshman in college. I found it early, which was very fortunate. I think had a lot to do with my success in the industry. And so I see that, right? If we can get people that really know they want to go this route, almost as more of a trade approach to finding their passion and their love for fitness and making a life out of it. I'm a working example. I think it's a great time to start. And I can see how this new certificate is also a better fit for that group as well.
That's a great idea. Yeah. I think, what I also like is it creates the option to have choice in what you do, right? So when you say, all right, this is the option, right? There's nothing else. If you want to be a personal trainer, I mean, there are other companies that are out there, but the accreditation process is very similar for any of the ones that you really would want to be accredited by. And so this says, hey, this is still the same great content, and all the content's the same. So you sign up for it, you don't get a different set of content. You get the only thing different. And this, I'm just going to pull up the email. And this is something that Abby had sent us, where it says the course, the certificate program, which is the new option. So it's the non-proctored exam. It's a open book option. It is non-proctored. You get 3 hours to complete the 100 questions. The other exam, which is the NASM-CPT exam, the NCCA accredited exam. And so the NCCA doesn't accredit content, by the way. They accredit the exam process. So the exam process must be proctored. The exam process, you've got 2 hours to complete the exam, and then there are 120 questions. Joe, do you know why there are 120 questions versus 100?
Yeah, I mean, from my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but having been a part of accreditation amongst other organizations as well, is there's almost like a testing process of questions, right? Is that, you know, going through these additional 20 questions that you'll never know which ones they are, right? You're not on the exam and you know, but they're seeing like, are these good questions for the future? And if enough people get them right or get them wrong, that helps NASM as well as, you know, the accreditation process continue to decide, how do we keep making the exam varied? So it's not something someone can just come in and memorize, but also how do we make sure that the questions are in fact good questions for the content?
Yeah. And as you've been through this process, then what they do, and the people who do the accreditation are pretty amazing, because they're professionals in test writing and test taking, and they don't know anything about fitness. So you get a group of personal trainers that decide, here are the questions and here's your A, B, C, and D. And if they're not a good question, somebody that knows nothing about this, they don't know anything about fitness, can walk up and say the answer is D. And they're like, how? And however they know, they're like professional test takers. And they say this, you've got a distractor, you've got, there's an outlier clearly, so that one's thrown out. These are similar. They have this whole thing, and they can just tell. And so if you're good at test taking, then you can crush an exam like this without even necessarily having to really study it. Most people are not like that. But the other part is, if you write good test questions, then the good test questions don't give a lot away. And that's when they go up and they say, okay, this is a good test question because I've read it. And as even an outsider who's professional at that can look at it and be like, nothing's given away. And that is, in fact, the accreditation process from the NCCA. It is an exam taking accreditation. It doesn't accredit the content. So in the future, you may see some things where they're like, okay, do we have accredited content? And that may be something that we see in the future. But right now, the current accreditation is the examination process through the NASM personal trainer track, and then followed by, or maybe preceded by, the first step for a lot of people now, which is getting that trainer certificate that lets you know, like, you're in the right place. You're doing the right things. You're studying a topic that you want to study. And there's so many people throughout the years, Joe, and yours is a little different because people that come to you for the sake of studying. People reach out to me all the time. And I get these messages throughout the years of, I've taken the exam twice. I'm not a good test taker. I'm very concerned that I'm not going to be a personal trainer. I get 3 times, 3 strikes and you're out. What do I do? And I don't know how to answer that question because I don't know what they are doing. And this is a great option for those people who are just kind of concerned and hurting because they want something so desperately, but this isn't they're not able to meet that test taking hurdle. And so I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I get the same messages. You know, we probably have one of the highest volume YouTube channels specifically. We put out so much great content for those who are trying to study for the NASM certification to make sure that they learn the information, pass the exam, but they also understand how to apply it. And that tends to be the most common, like what you just said, same thing. People who maybe they've failed the exam 2-3 times. And I feel for them because I can tell from the conversations, because we offer up, you know, free coaching calls, jumping on phone calls. I've talked to literally at this point, hundreds and hundreds of people from around the world. And I I can tell on the call, I'm like, gosh, you've got the right interpersonal stuff. Like I can tell that you're meant to help people. And there's just this barrier, right? This little barrier. Some of it, maybe like you said, there's test taking intelligence and experience. And I can say, because I went right away when NASM, alerted me to the new update, boom, I said, put it on my account. I'm taking it right now. And so I jumped on and I took it. And I think, again, I think it was a great exam. I think it did a really great job of testing your knowledge of the information, maybe in a format that'll resonate, with people going through it. So I think a great step for a lot of reasons and for a lot of people.
Nice. Very good. Well, let's move past this, because I'm going to dig into picking your brain a little bit more about what you do, because I think we've kind of gone through this concept, this idea of the difference between the CPT and the certificate program. So I want to ask you, because you started a personal training school down in South Florida, how did that come about? Like, what's your origin story for this?
Yeah. Well, when I was first born, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go back that far. I actually used to work for Florida Atlantic University. I did my master's degree. Yeah, I was a graduate assistant at the time, and that's what brought me down to South Florida. And I kind of got thrust into teaching some programs. I had been a trainer for a couple of years, back in the Midwest, like I said, got certified when I was 19, started getting experience in the university environment. And I fell in love with the teaching process, for one. And I also saw how quickly people were doing well, much faster with this process. Someone else guiding them through, teaching them, being able to add in practical anecdotes along the way. And I just saw the impact. I mean, obviously for us, it was the impact of the people we were hiring, but we had a lot of people from the community also coming to the university to take this. And along the way, when I first got there, we were teaching a different program, and I transitioned over to NASM because of my experience with NASM. And but I always knew I had aspirations to build something myself. And so I had been building my own training business on the side while I was working full time, training in the mornings, night times. And I knew I wanted to do this privately. And it just so happened, as I left my full-time job and started my training business, that I had also connected with NASM. And like I said, the timing kind of aligned. And, thankfully there was another individual in the area who was also kind of looking into the same thing. And so we combined forces and formed the academy. And, that was 2014 into 15 when we first started. And like I said, it was primarily in person, because in my mind, that's really all I knew, right? I was like, I know if I'm with people in the gym, I can train them how to train people. I can make it all make sense. And I was hesitant, probably like a lot of people on the virtual side, until we started doing it. And now, now I'm blown away. It's my, my favorite to be able to connect with people and do those things. But, truthfully, we used it as a hiring platform, because I opened a gym here in South Florida, and I said, hey, I know the curriculum, I know the process. So if anyone wants to work for us, here's the training plan. Like, you're going to have to go through
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it started from that. And then when I sold the gym, I said, hey, I'm going all in on education. I love it. I think the industry needs it. I think there's a missing element for those people you're talking about who need something added to the process, as we look at it long term. And that's really how the Axiom Fitness Academy was born.
Nice. And there are a lot of people down in South Florida. So there are a lot of people that train, a lot of gyms down in South Florida. And those gyms need personal trainers. And for those who are like, I just don't want to necessarily sit and try to figure this out on my own through a self-guided study, they can come to you and have that support in the process in order for them to get their NASM education and get certified or certificated now, and then move on into a training facility, which I think is pretty cool.
That's the best part. It's one thing I already know. If people, when they come through and they work with us, they're going to get certified, right? Like, we've been teaching the NASM content for over a decade now, and we've got a good process of helping them learn the material. And it takes time, right? It's a 10-week course, and even that goes by fast. Because you're learning anatomy, physiology, terminology. And so for those who are listening, if you're trying to shortcut it in less time than that, you're going to miss out on some good stuff. You really want to go deep on it. Yeah. And I think a lot of people do struggle. They struggle. I always laugh. It's kind of just like working with clients, that as a trainer, part of what they're getting is your accountability. They're going to show up because you're there. And I find it the same thing for students. They know that someone's guiding them through a process, and so it's great. I just love being a part of people getting started. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, very cool. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the NASM-CPT podcast. I'm Rick Richey, and this is my guest, Joe Drake. Joe and I have known each other for a little over a year from actually meeting in person, but we have kind of known of each other for years at this point. And Joe owns Axiom, which is an education company that teaches exercise science to personal trainers and teaches the NASM content. So, Joe, I'm put you on the spot. I want two things from you. One, what is your favorite thing to teach? And what do you find the most challenging for yourself to teach when it comes to the programming?
Yeah, I love that. Honestly, my favorite thing to teach is we call it prep and prime, but like dynamic warm-ups. And it seems kind of silly because, you know, everyone's like, well, shouldn't we focus on the workout? And the answer is yes, of course. But I find that like once we start strength training, that tends to be what most people do. And I know because of my injuries in my own body that the value for dynamic warm-ups and just getting people moving and feeling better before and after sessions, it just elevates the value in your training so much. And so I really love teaching that stuff because I can see the light bulbs go off in people's heads. And all of a sudden, as they're getting certified, like they're totally changing how they approach training. So that's probably my favorite, is getting people moving better, aside from getting stronger and fitter. And probably the most challenging, I would say, would be like anatomical terminology. And I love this stuff because I'm a total nerd. That's why I went higher level education. But I know a lot of people struggle, like anterior, posterior, contralateral, ipsilateral. It's a lot of terminology. So getting people bought into learning the language of our profession is a challenge. It's a challenge, but it's one that I'm happy to take on.
Yeah, awesome, man. I love that. It's a challenge for everybody. I tell people it's a new language, right? Like you're trying to learn a new language, and then you think about people where English is the second language and they're learning English, but now they're also learning Latin and Greek. So, and all of these other words that are coming about that don't make sense to us sometimes when we're learning it. And so the challenge is there for a lot of people. And you probably have English as a second language for a lot of folks down in South Florida. Where in South, we keep saying South Florida, like there's no specifics with that. Where?
Yeah. Good old Boca Raton, which if we translate is the rat's mouth. It sounds sexier in English than it does in the translation. But yeah, Boca Raton. And like you said, I mean, just the fitness industry here is so amazing. It's what's kept me here, and made me realize there's just so much opportunity in fitness and training. If you find the right people, you find the right places. And South Florida has been one of those for me because I've just gotten so much mentorship and connection from some of the other experienced coaches down here.
Yeah. I'll say this. I opened up I was the fitness manager for the Equinox in South Beach. So I moved down to South Florida for about 6 months until I realized Miami was not for me. But while I was down there, we had a lot of people actually that I hired on as trainers that went to Florida Atlantic University or college, and there are a lot of really fine trainers that ended up coming from some of the schools that are down in that area. So shout out to Florida Atlantic for producing some quality trainers out of there.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's, like you said, not only so many great places to train, but there really are. Just as a fitness consumer, and it's lots of major cities, the choices that are there, the coaches and trainers. There's just so much good opportunity to work with great people, throughout the country, but definitely South Florida. I'm not from here. I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere where people probably need fitness a lot more. But they may not value it as much as here in South Florida. So, as I knew I was going to make my life as a coach and trainer. It's what I loved from the very beginning. It was a great fit for me. So it's been awesome.
Well, man, I'm so happy that you joined us today. Are there any things that you would like to just talk about as we sign off and we wrap up? You can shout out your business, your IG handles, YouTube, all of that stuff.
Love that. Yeah. We're pretty much every week constantly putting out good study material, training prep material for those like many people who are listening to this, either who are in the process of getting certified or maybe in the first couple of years, because I know that's just the challenging phase. And so that's definitely where like myself and Axiom are committed to serving the industry. So there's a ton of free resources over there. I myself, Coach Joe Drake at Instagram, very active there as well. I get people reaching out all the time from some of the YouTube videos asking questions. And so I'm happy to connect with you guys there as well. And what we also do is we also offer up just a, opportunity to jump on a free coaching call with people who are maybe struggling with the process, whether it is certification or like in the first couple of years. I've had so many people just give me free time in the last 16 years of training, like some of the biggest names in the industry. And so I feel like it's my responsibility to pay it forward to other people who are out there trying to do the same thing.
Awesome, man. Good, man. Well, it's so good to reconnect with you, my friend. And I'm sure we'll reconnect at a conference somewhere, maybe in the States this time. And we don't have to go all the way to Thailand to do that. So I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind going back to Thailand.
Yeah, I mean, we can go on a trip. But
yeah, absolutely. I'm okay with that. By the way, I have to tell this funny story about Nick Tuminello, our buddy. So I was with Sue Falzone, and we're going to go meet you and Nick. And as many of the listeners know, I'm diabetic. And so I'm going out to meet you and Nick Tuminello in some place in Thailand. And Sue Falzone and I were talking about going there. And we're like, where is it? And Nick goes, oh, it's super close. It's like 2 stops away. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, 2 stops away, and we're going to go on this little tour around and these tuk-tuks and stuff like that. I'm going to take a little extra insulin because we're going to be eating noodles and rice and things like that. It was not close to 2 stops away. It was nowhere close.
It was a ways. Yeah, it was a ways.
It was a long way. It was like we were 30 minutes, and then we transferred, and then it was 2 stops away after the 30 minutes. It was like 40 minutes to get there. And
I still remember that look.
I know, it's so spooky, but I get off the train, we meet the tour guide, and we're still on the train platform, and it's hot, and it had been raining, and I can't tell if it's hot because I'm hot or because everything. And then I was like, all of a sudden, I was like, I'm going to have to lie down. And so on the train platform, I'm like, hey, before I lie down on the platform, does anybody have any sugar? And Sue Falzone went into like medical athletic trainer mode, right? And she runs down, the guy's like, there's a 7-Eleven downstairs. So we run downstairs, and I was like, is there a Coke or something, like a Coca-Cola? And so she runs to the back, and she comes back, and she holds a can, and the guy goes, that's a Diet Coke. Go back. And so she runs back, and she grabs another can, and it's all in Thai, right? And he goes, that's a Coke Zero. That was like, is there juice?
You're like, I just need something. Give me some sugar.
Oh, I will never forget that with Nick Two-Stop Tuminello and you and Sue Falzone. And I think we had a great time after the medical crisis was averted.
Yeah, I'm glad that we got that taken care of, because we did have a great night, and that could have ended in a very different way.
Yeah, we had a great time. I had a great time talking to you today, man. Thank you so much for being here and offering to give us your insights. I appreciate what you do down there, and I'm so happy you're part of the NASM family.
I am as well. I'm glad to be connected with you, Rick.
Thank you, brother. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for listening. If you got questions for me, you can reach out. Hit me up at dr.rickrichey on Instagram, or you can email me, rick.richey@nasm.org. Like, subscribe, share with your fitness friends and family. Thank you for listening. This has been the NASM CPT podcast.